Hey folks, John Kelly. Welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. I'm bringing you a special guest for one of three podcasts. My Nicol, Mrs. Kelly. A lot of you have heard me over the years refer to her during my time at Broward in the training division, and I've referred to her extensively in the book and in the Sometimes Heroes Need Help Life Leadership and Wellness program. Really, she's the reason why I'm alive. So I figured it's about time you met the woman who's kept me on this earth longer than I deserve. And we're going to talk about life, man. We're going to talk about our relationship, the good and the bad. And we're going to talk about some obstacles, right? Some wounds, some self-inflicted, some caused by no fault of anyone, and how you get through that, as a couple. And so the first of three episodes, the first we're going to talk about our courtship and alcohol, and my being an alcoholic and how that impacted the relationship and how we got through that obstacle. The second episode, we're going to talk about our relationship, our marriage, my infidelity. Should be a great conversation. Fuck me. And then on the third episode, we're going to talk about how you don't become us in the short term and how you do become us in the long term. And you're going to hear from Nicol. First time ever. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Nicol Kelly, Mrs. Kelly, my Nicol, to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast, and she is going to wheel her ass in. This is the high speed. There you go. Okay, it's little Nicol. All right. So hey, listen. I'm going to remove these because I don't need them, and I wanted to say thank you first because big balls, kid. Big balls. You have been in it from the beginning, and not only have you tolerated a lot, but you've grown a lot. Like, you're not the same woman that you were 30 years ago when I met you.
Yeah.
And so it was time. And somebody had mentioned, I would really like to hear from Nicol and what her thoughts are. And I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. And so I think, like every story, let's start at the beginning. A lot of the listeners know us, but they don't know our whole story. And let me see here. Get that up. Go ahead, D. And so maybe we start with that. Like, we had a regular courtship, right? We
did.
I didn't swipe left to meet you.
No.
And I would say, like, I wonder now, looking back, because, this is misnomer that, like, the job makes you an alcoholic. Like, I was pretty much an alcoholic
from the time I met you.
From the time you met me. From the time I met you. Holy smokes. So, we're not going to delve into why I was the way I was. Let's just say it was, my last name's Kelly. I'm from Boston. And
that sums it up.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of, you knew I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Why did you marry me?
Oh.
Well, I mean, if you knew I had a problem drinking.
No, I didn't. Honestly, I did not know you had a problem drinking from the get-go, because you always handled yourself very well. You never got mean or nasty. You never you weren't falling down. You weren't slurring your words. You were John times 10 when you drank, and you're a lot in a good way.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you drank, you were a lot of fun.
Good. Okay. So,
So, and we were also very young in our early 20s.
right.
You know, that was, you went out, you had a couple drinks before you went out.
I want to think that maybe because I have this thing when I talk, like when crazy becomes normal, it's
Yeah,
hard to differentiate what normal should be.
right.
And so maybe there was some of that going on. Like
Yeah.
it was just the time.
Yeah.
And like drinking and driving, it wasn't, this is gonna sound fucking terrible. It wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Like it was only a big deal if you killed somebody.
Right.
And then everybody pointed the finger and said, how dare
Right.
you?
Right.
But listen, I was a cop in South Florida in the 90s. I had basically a license to do whatever I want. We cops weren't arresting each other
Right.
for drinking and driving. So kind of empowered me.
And I
right?
was used to that because my dad was a cop and he was a heavy drinker. And,
Yeah.
you know, he always had a couple drinks before he went out
Yeah.
and everything was always fine.
Yeah.
So it was just what I was used to growing up.
So that was
You
like
know,
a
it
huge
was-
red flag for you.
No, I mean, everybody had cocktails getting ready.
Yeah. We just never stopped having, I just never stopped
Yeah.
having cocktails.
Yeah.
All right, so with that being said, pretty early on in our marriage, you were like, okay, this isn't normal.
Right.
Like, when did you, we never discussed this and you haven't told me this answer. When did you so we get married in
So we did,
95.
right.
Best wedding, party, friends, family. It was really special.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like most weddings are, right? They're like one of the happiest days of
Right.
your life. When did you realize, how soon after the happiest day of your life did you realize that maybe there's a problem here and maybe I made a
Well,
mistake?
when we went to friends of ours' wedding, about 3 months after our wedding,
Okay.
and you had too much to drink at that wedding. You remember backing up the truck
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
clipped your
Okay.
mirror,
Okay.
but you just had your knee done, and I think you're on medication,
So I was,
and you were drinking. So
this is
I
why I
that was like the start of it. That's when I went, ooh,
so
we
you-
put a
so
big
the
dent
fact
in the
that I
mirror.
was on prescription medication
Well, you
and
were.
drunk, that so you gave me a pat.
Remember you had
I know.
the jean shirt on and the pocket, and you put the rum runner in your pocket on your crutches, and you were
Right.
dancing.
Yeah. So I was, yeah. Okay. But so like,
That was like the first little start
little
of it,
hint that,
and
like,
then
what's going on?
and then
here?
it was the Disney trip when you wrecked my car and I was
Yeah.
away.
What happened there?
What do you mean? What happened?
The Disney trip when I wrecked your car.
Well, when
you
I went
there.
away, we took
Yeah.
my cousin away,
Yeah, I talk about it in the book.
and I left my car.
Yeah, Nicole left her Corvette and I went out with Teddy Taranu. We went to Darren Dow's house for a Halloween party, God rest his soul. Ted didn't drink. I got absolutely shitty. And Ted wasn't gonna drive the Corvette, so I drove. And we ended up jumping a median, snapping upper and lower control arms, spinning southbound and the northbound lanes of Federal Highway.
And you still said it wasn't your drinking, that my
No.
tires were bald.
Yeah.
That's why you wrecked my car.
Poor vehicle maintenance.
Yeah.
Couldn't have anything to do. Right, so we get through that. Nicole gets home and I tell her there's a white convertible Mustang in the driveway. First words out of your mouth were,
Where's my car?
"Where's my Corvette?" I'm having some work done to it. Yeah, and so
It didn't take long.
no, we got your car back.
It was a couple days after
right.
the incident that you had told me.
And then how does it go from there? Because now, like, I almost killed my friend.
Well, that was
Maybe I
your
almost died.
that was your wake up call.
I don't know, was it?
Almost. I mean, you had one
I had
one little incident.
calls.
No, yeah, it was sure. That's when you first started going to your meeting. No,
No,
it wasn't after.
God. I love the fact that you can't remember accurately what happened. There's probably
Babe,
some,
it was 28
I know.
years ago.
Well, if you remember, I remember, because I remember you sat me down after that. After
No, I
wrecked
didn't
the
know it was
car.
that. I thought it was
after work. Well, maybe it was
when
after
you were
work.
on your bike coming home
Yeah.
and you're supposed to
All
bring
right, so
home.
that was the first incident, and then shortly thereafter, I talk about it in the book, and when I speak, I went to work shit faced, and I couldn't even back the car out of the driveway. It was,
That's the first time I ever saw you just drunk and sloppy.
yeah,
You couldn't even stand up in the shower.
no,
And I said, you need to call in sick. You're not going to work. And you refused. You put
Yeah.
your uniform on and you went.
I don't even know why I did that. That doesn't even make sense.
I
I mean, it would have been so much easier just to go, I'm fucking throwing up. I'm sick. I'm not coming in tonight. They wouldn't have cared why.
right.
All right, don't show up. But I felt compelled, I don't know why, to go to work. And so I'm drunk, passed out over the steering wheel of my marked unit in uniform, trying to back out of the driveway in Cooper City. And
Our neighbor comes over.
he called you, didn't he?
Mhm.
What'd he say?
He said, I think something's wrong with John, Nicole. I think he's sick. He's not feeling well. I said, thanks, Roger.
Yeah. I remember, well, I don't remember, but I remember you telling me that you came out and you know, tore into me pretty good.
Hmm.
And then you called our friend to come get me. Come get your drunk friend. You called Steve.
Yeah.
And so Steve took care of me that night, set me up at a house. But
Your
my
sergeant.
yeah,
Sergeant.
well, my sergeants realized that I was shitty at work, and instead of locking me up, they sent me home
Mhm.
at about 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so to fast track that, because it's not about my story, it's about how this impacted you. They bring me in the next day. You've got two options: either we command refer you, or you figure it out.
Mhm.
But you can't ever do this again. We'll never condone this. So I called Judy over in employee assistance, and she gave me a number for AA. AA guy off of Davie, a retired Davie cop that lived off of University Drive, had meetings Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. And so I went to my first AA meeting to get help, right? And so that whole thing starts, but before then, you sit me down and you have a conversation with me. What was that like?
I told you that I would do anything in the world to help you and that I loved you,
Yeah,
but I wasn't going to live like your mother.
yeah. That was the other thing that some of you may not know. So my dad was a very high functioning alcoholic, super hard worker, great provider, but he just, when he started, he never stopped. And so that my mother dealt with that. I remember freaking carrying him up on Christmas Eve from the dinner table, you know, putting him to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you weren't going to be, she tolerated that for the entirety of her marriage, right up until the point he left her.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't going to do it
No.
because I've seen too many of my dad's friends do it to their wives. The first wife, the second wife, and the third wife.
Yeah.
I just, I wasn't going to do it.
Right. So, when you realize that, like, I mean, that's an ultimatum for me. It's like, do I continue drinking
Right.
and possibly lose you? Bree wasn't in the picture yet.
Mm-mm. But I didn't give you it. I didn't say, stop drinking or I'm out of here.
No,
I guess I just kind of said, if you're going to continue, yeah, I guess I did say it.
yeah, well, when you say I'm not going to be
because
your mother, that kind of makes me say, well, then if I don't stop, you're not going to be my mother who stayed in a marriage
Right.
with an alcoholic.
I didn't see the severity of your drinking until that happened. Because you okay it in your head thinking, well, you know, he functions, he's fine.
Right. I wasn't really abusive ever. Never raised a hand. I never talked
John,
mean.
you're always fun to be around. You were, and you're always kind of the life of the party without drinking. But when you did drink, it was everything was just magnified. And that's why it was, to me, never an issue with you.
Right. It's funny. Up until episode 2, all the horrible things that ever happened to me while I was drunk.
Yeah, that's what you'd said. Nothing good came of it.
Nothing ever good came of it. And so, did you like feel like a sigh of relief when I went to tell me when I started going to AA, what were your thoughts?
Ah, that I could never have a bottle of wine in the house for a long time.
That's a concern. That's a concern. That
That I was gonna
how is
do.
this sobriety going to affect me?
Yeah, and how sick, it's kind of selfish, but I know for the longest time, for a long time, it was actually good for me because I did. I mean, back then I was drinking, seltzers and wine. That's it. I wasn't drinking,
Right.
vodka or anything super hard, but I didn't bring it in the house. I wanted to support you. I was proud of you. And
That was something that I found interesting because, like, in this space now, we talk a lot about shame. Like, I'm an alcoholic, I'm this, I'm that, and there's an embarrassment that you are that person. Or like, did you ever feel embarrassment that like you were married to a guy who
no,
couldn't
never.
drink?
No, if anything, it made me feel I was so proud of you. No, it was quite the opposite. It was more, it showed, I think it showed both of us and the people that we loved around us, friends and family, that you were strong. And I was proud that you could admit that you had an issue with it. And it takes strength to stay away from something that you're addicted to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, listen, I know that makes sense, but I can tell you in this space,
Yeah.
those two things don't necessarily go hand in
That's a
hand.
shame because I don't look at it that way.
Right. And so, how do you get the listener? What insight do you provide the listener to look at maybe their spouse who's maybe has a problem with alcohol, who they've become aware of it, but they're maybe afraid to have that conversation? What would you say to them to help them conduct their own little intervention with someone that they loved? Maybe a husband to a wife or a wife to a husband. I know. That's a fucking curveball, man.
Put me on the spot, Kelly.
Yeah, well, it's just
because I think
because
I think if you approach it and come at it with love, just
yeah,
love, not anything less than that,
Hmm.
because you know in your head that you can't continue to live like that.
right.
So there's no reason, I think, for you to say, I'm not going to live like this anymore,
Right.
but I love you and we're going to fix you.
Hmm.
I'm going to help you fix you.
Right. I think that's a great approach. I think
I think it's just
love.
I think it's love.
Yeah.
And not finger pointing and shaming.
It sometimes backfires, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, we don't, you may feel better in the moment, motherfucking me. And
right. But it doesn't, God knows I've learned it doesn't do anything.
doesn't solve the problem.
No.
Wow.
It makes you feel better for a second, but it magnifies everything else around you.
Yeah.
If you don't come from a good place.
That's great advice. That's great
all
advice.
I can think of.
No, I think that's great. Part of all this is this skill that you have, this talent that you have to be able to approach and talk about difficult conversations. That's a skill set I didn't possess. And that'll be the making of episode 2.
Yeah.
But I just find that I was really good at having tough conversations with other people in their situations, but never in my own.
And it should have been the other way around.
It should have been the other way around. It should have been harder to solve strangers' problems. It should be easy to solve my own. And that's that's that weird place that a lot of first responders find themselves in, is that they're excellent at unfucking everyone else at the expense of ever taking a hard look at their own lives.
Yeah.
We're really masters of that. And so you were able to have really tough conversations with me. And for the longest time, I avoided having not only tough conversations, but really any conversations that could not go well in my mind, potentially. I just avoided
Right.
them altogether.
But that was years in the making for you. That wasn't just with me.
How did you
You
get to that
continue,
place?
you,
How did you become so comfortable having tough conversations?
me?
Yeah, how did you? Because I couldn't. Not at home, not with you. I can't imagine that that was hard, that was easy for you to come to me and go, yeah, we're not doing this, and I'm not going to live this way. I mean, even when things got to an extreme point with me and you, I I wouldn't have that conversation.
Mm.
How did you have that
I
conversation?
guess I knew how uncomfortable I would feel if I didn't. I knew that the repercussions would have been worse. It's just easier to say, I'm not doing this. I'm out, or we're going to make this good.
Right.
That's the only thing I can think of. I don't know if I was afraid of what would have happened if I didn't.
If you didn't have the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid the opposite way. I was afraid what happens if I do have the conversation.
Mm.
You were afraid. What if I don't address this? How much worse
Right.
could it be?
Because if he's going to work now like this, it's only a matter of time it's going to happen again, and he's going to get caught, or he's going to hurt somebody, or he's going to hurt himself.
Yeah.
So once you see something escalating, for me, it was easy to go,
See, that's the
because
opposite. That is the exact polar opposite of the way I look at a problem, or I
right,
used to look at a problem.
right,
Was that the best way to address it is to not to talk about it.
right.
And you,
But you were always like that from the time you were younger with your parents.
yeah,
You didn't address things because you just wanted to keep everything calm and smooth, and figure, if I don't bring it up, we won't ruffle feathers, we won't argue. So that's how you were.
yeah,
And you just carried that on through adulthood.
for a long time,
Yeah.
long time. I, you know, which is great. Thank you for sharing that stuff with the listeners. Um, you know, life is a series of never-ending challenges, right? It's like, just because we got through my alcoholism, you know, that wasn't the end of our relationship being tested.
No.
I think a lot of times people think like, oh, we made it through this, we're good.
Right.
Well, you're good for as long as you don't fall back. But I would say, I know this now in hindsight, that we still had a lot of growing to do. And me as a man, I still had a lot of growing and learning to do.
And me too.
Too. And you too. We'll save that part
Yeah. Yeah.
for episode 2, because I think people are going to want to know how you survive that, how you grow together after something that fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And so this is what I think we're going to do, because my little Nicole and I are going to take small bites of this elephant. Yeah, because I think that's the best way to tackle a problem. So we're going to wrap on this. And episode 2, we're going to talk about my infidelity and me doing some really shameful things and me fucking hurting people. And you're going to hear from Nicole, like how she got through that and what she did and what she thought. And And then in the third episode, we're going to talk about the things that we implement daily to keep those situations from ever occurring again. Our lessons learned,
Mhm.
and how you don't become us in the short term and how you do become us
In the long term.
long term.
Love you.
Thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate you, and we'll hear more from little Nicol in episode 2.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.